They called her mother a witch and burned her alive. But years later, in the pouring rain, a blind madman muttered her lullaby. Now, Ijeoma must kneel in the ashes of her past to uncover the truth the village tried to bury. You're watching African Tales by Ijele. Like, share and subscribe for more gripping folktales that touch the soul. The skies had broken again. A slow drizzle whispered across the dusty village of Yumuk, soaking its red earth and silencing even the wild birds. But the rain was not enough to wash away the memory of that fire, the fire that changed everything. Little Ijeoma stood barefoot in the crowd, her tiny fingers clutching her chest as her mother screamed, "Witch! Burn her! Let the gods see justice!" Their voices were louder than the flames. Faces twisted in rage, others in fear. She didn't understand why her mother, Nwekego, the kind woman who healed people with herbs and midwifed children safely into the world, was now tied to a stake like a criminal. The smell of smoke, mingled with rain and blood, became something she would carry in her lungs forever. Nwekego's last words were not curses. No. They were a lullaby. Soft. Gentle. Sung through tears as the flames swallowed her. Rain, oh rain, wash the pain. Mama's love will rise again. When the drums are silent, and the madman sings. That song became forbidden. The villagers spat at its mention. Ijeoma was cast out, left in the care of a distant aunt who never let her forget. You are the daughter of a witch. Speak too loudly, and they will burn you too. It had been 10 years since the fire. Ijeoma, now 17, had grown into a quiet shadow. Her eyes rarely met others, and her voice remained soft, like her mother's had been. She spent her days fetching water, grinding at bono, cleaning. Existing. Never living. But on the day the skies roared again with thunder, something changed. Rain poured as she walked the village path, her wrapper soaked to her skin. People rushed for shelter, but there, by the shrine road, sat the madman. The one they called Oki Aniera. The blind one with a crooked staff and a voice that mumbled riddles. He sat in the rain, head bowed, face toward the heavens as if searching for something he could no longer see. Ijeoma would have passed, she always did, but then. He sang. Rain, oh rain, wash the pain. Mama's love will rise again. She froze. The ground shifted beneath her feet. That was her mother's song. No one remembered it. No one dared sing it. But he did. Word for word. Drawn by something older than fear, Ijeoma dropped to her knees. The rain fell harder, but she crawled to him, trembling. Where did you hear that song? She whispered, tears mixing with raindrops. The old man turned toward her, sightless eyes hidden behind gray lashes. His voice was soft but steady. I was there, the day they burned her. And I was the one who could not save her. Ijeoma's heart pounded like war drums. Who are you? She asked, voice breaking. The man slowly raised his hand and opened his palm. Inside, wet from the rain, were ashes. Dark. Old. Preserved like a sacred thing. Your mother gave me this, he said, before the fire. She said, if her daughter ever found me, to give her the truth. He handed her the ashes. Ijeoma cried out. They were warm in her hands, almost pulsing, alive. The madman began to chant names, names of elders, names of those who pointed fingers, names of those who benefited from her mother's death. He was not mad. He was cursed, cursed to forget until the true heir of Nwekego's blood touched his hands in the rain. He was her grandfather. A once respected diviner who went silent after the trial, struck by a spiritual blindness when he failed to protect his only daughter. Now, in that rain, grandfather and granddaughter knelt together, surrounded by people too shocked to speak. Umbrellas hovered above them like witnesses. Old women crossed themselves. Some cried. Some turned away. But the truth had already begun to awaken. The ashes would speak. The bloodline would rise. And vengeance, soaked in years of sorrow, would come not with fire, but with truth. And the rain kept falling. That night, Ijeoma could not sleep. She sat inside her small, leaking hut. The ashes from the madman, her grandfather, were wrapped inside a piece of cloth and hidden under her mat. But she could feel them calling, whispering. Her heart was heavy, and her mind was full of questions. Why did they really burn her mother? Why did the village hate that song? And what was this strange power she felt the moment she touched those ashes? Suddenly, the wind outside grew loud. Something tapped her window, tap, tap, tap. Not like rain. It felt human. She rose slowly and looked outside. Nothing. But when she turned around, her eyes fell on the old clay pot in the corner. The one her mother left behind before her death. It had been sealed shut for 10 years. Now it was open. Her hands shook as she walked to it. Inside the pot was only one thing, a small black bead necklace and a folded piece of cloth. When she opened the cloth, a name was written inside with charcoal. ESDMKPA. The strength of the throne. She blinked. What did it mean? Suddenly, her door burst open. The madman stood there. Wet. Shivering. But speaking clearly. Your mother was born to be the next high priestess. But she ran from the seat. She loved your father. She wanted peace. But the elders, they wanted power. Ijeoma gasped. What do you mean? He coughed. They framed her. Said she used dark magic. Said she killed a child. But it was a lie. That child never died. Her legs weakened. What? The child was you. The rain outside grew louder, as if the skies were crying for the truth. Ijeoma fell to her knees. I was the child? Her grandfather nodded. You were born during an eclipse. A sacred time. The priest of Yumuk said you were an abomination. He told the elders that your birth would bring death. That was a lie. Why? She whispered. Because your mother refused to bow. She challenged their lies. She questioned their greed. And you were the symbol of her rebellion. Tears poured from Ijeoma's eyes. The village made her believe she was cursed. Evil. The daughter of a witch. But it was all a plan to erase her family from history. She stood up. Her hands clenched. They will hear me. The old man smiled for the first time in years. Then you must visit the sacred grounds. There your mother hid her final message, inside the belly of the earth. Before the sun rose, Ijeoma wrapped herself in a black shawl and followed her grandfather. They walked barefoot through the muddy path toward the old shrine, abandoned for years, swallowed by trees and silence. Nobody came here anymore. The village feared the place. They said it was cursed. But Ijeoma felt something pull her forward. A strange strength rising inside her. They reached a small mound of earth behind the shrine. Her grandfather knelt and began to dig with his fingers. Ijeoma joined him. After minutes of digging, their hands touched something hard, a wooden box wrapped in palm leaves. He opened it. Inside was a scroll. Ancient yellow, written with blood and red dye. Her grandfather read it slowly, tears falling from his blind eyes. To my daughter, if they have burned me, let this truth remain. I did not kill. I did not curse. I carried light, not darkness. The throne of Yumuk belongs to truth, not fear. If you have found this, then rise. Carry your mother's voice. Let raindrops wash the ashes, and let justice reign. Ijeoma touched the scroll, and suddenly, her body shook. Visions poured into her eyes. She saw her mother, young, strong, beautiful, standing in front of the elders, shouting. She saw men whispering lies. She saw the crowd. The fire. The betrayal. Then she saw something else. A sacred staff, hidden beneath the village's judgment square. The staff of the true high priestess. She opened her eyes. I know what to do, she said. Her grandfather smiled through tears. Then go. Let the rain fall. And as they stood up, the skies began to weep again. The sun had not yet fully risen when Ijeoma stood in the middle of the village square, her feet firm in the red sand. She was soaked from the early morning rain, her shawl clinging to her skin. But her eyes burned like firewood beneath hot coals. In her hand she held the scroll. The truth. Her mother's final words. The same fireplace when Wakigo was burned years ago was now cold. Dead. But Ijeoma stood before it with one purpose. To bring it back to life, not with fire, but with truth. One by one, villagers began to gather. Whispers followed her like flies. Is that the witch's daughter? What is she doing here? Is she mad? But Ijeoma raised her voice. For the first time in her life, she shouted. The day you burned my mother, you burned the truth with her. But ashes do not die. They remember. Gasps filled the square. The head of the council, Elder Folktale, stepped forward with a frown. He was the same man who led the trial years ago. His lips were dry. His eyes are sharp. Silence! How dare you speak before this sacred land? Do you want us to burn you too? But Ijeoma did not move. She held the scroll up. Read this. Or are you afraid of what your hands have done? He reached for the scroll, but his hand trembled. Suddenly, the skies roared with thunder. The wind howled. Palm leaves danced. It was as if the spirits themselves had arrived to witness what would happen next. And then, from the crowd, someone shouted, She speaks the truth! I was there! I saw the lies! Everyone turned. It was Mama Yugo, the oldest midwife in the village. She stepped forward, crying, Wakigo delivered my twins! She saved me! They said she killed a child, but it was a lie! The baby lived! This girl is that baby! The village shook. Elder Folktale's face went pale. And Ijeoma's voice rose again. You called my mother a witch. But she was a healer. A leader. A priestess. You killed her because you feared her light. The fireplace behind her cracked open, literally cracked. The earth beneath it began to break apart, revealing a hidden chamber below. The villagers screamed. And Ijeoma stepped in. Beneath the fireplace was a narrow, dark tunnel made of clay and rock. Ijeoma crawled in, following the strange glow coming from the end. Her heart pounded, but her mother's voice echoed in her ears. Let raindrops wash the ashes, and let justice reign. At the end of the tunnel was a small chamber lit by natural light from above. There, sitting on a stone platform, was a golden staff wrapped in palm leaves and white cloth. It had cowries on its head and a red jewel in the middle. She reached for it, and as soon as her fingers touched it, a strange wind blew around her. Visions filled her head again. Her mother was holding the staff. The elders hid it underground. A secret vow to never let a woman lead the village again. She wept. Not because she was afraid, but because she finally remembered everything. As she stepped out of the chamber, staff in hand, the rain began to fall again. The villagers were all waiting. Quiet. Scared. Some were on their knees. Even Elder Folktale stepped back. And Ijeoma raised the staff high. From today, the curse is broken. The truth has risen. My mother's name will no longer be remembered in shame, but in honor. Thunder struck a tree nearby. The villagers screamed and scattered, but the old ones stayed. They fell on their knees and began to chant. Wakigo lives! The truth has come! Wakigo lives! The village of Yumuk had never seen a day like this. Ijeoma walked to the judgment hut, the very place where her mother had been sentenced, and stood at its entrance with the staff in her hand. Her grandfather was already waiting there, his eyes closed, praying in silence. One by one, the remaining elders were called to sit. Elder Folktale, Elder Nana, Elder Okonkwo, all men who signed her mother's death. Their heads were bowed low. A new voice rose from the people. Let them speak! Let them tell us why they killed the truth! Ijeoma looked at them, her eyes firm. Do you have anything to say? Elder Nana wept like a baby. We were afraid that a woman would take power. She knew things we didn't understand. We feared her strength. We feared the future. Elder Okonkwo said nothing. He simply walked forward, knelt before Ijeoma, and kissed the sand beneath her feet. But Elder Ophodile stood. She was a threat. I do not regret silencing her. But I regret that the people now know. He turned to leave. But as he walked away, lightning struck again, right in front of him. He screamed and fell to his knees. The people roared. Some ran. But most stayed. Because they had just witnessed something deeper than punishment. They had witnessed spiritual justice. Ijeoma walked forward. No more lies. No more fear. Let truth sit on the throne. The village of Yumuk was no longer the same. Children now sang Ijeoma's mother's song without fear. Women walked with lifted heads. Even the trees seemed to dance whenever the rain fell. For the first time in many years, truth was louder than fear. But peace never stays too long where evil once ruled. That night, as Ijeoma sat by the fire holding the sacred staff, her grandfather suddenly gasped. Something is watching us, he whispered. His blind eyes turned toward the forest. Ijeoma stood up. She felt it too. A strange silence had taken over the air. Even the crickets stopped singing. Then, a distant sound. A heavy breath from the shadows. Who's there? Ijeoma called out. No answer. Suddenly, the fire in front of her went out on its own, snuffed like a candle in the wind. Her skin crawled. Her breath caught. The staff in her hand grew cold. Then she heard it, a voice. The ashes have woken, but the blood must sleep. She turned sharply. But no one was there. Only a single black feather, floating to the ground. The next morning, 3 chickens were found dead in the village square. No wounds. No blood. Just lying there stiff, with burn marks around their eyes. The elders panicked. This is not ordinary, said Elder Okonkwo. Something is angry. They called Ijeoma. She listened quietly. Then she spoke. Something wants me to stop. Her grandfather confirmed it. Before your mother died, she told me she had a vision of a spirit trapped beneath the burning tree. A dark soul. One that fed on fear. When they burned her, the fire woke it. The villagers trembled. You mean, it was never about her? Mama Yugo asked. Yes, Ijeoma said. She was a gatekeeper. Her death opened the gate. The wind howled again. Trees shook. The ground under their feet felt like it moved. Suddenly, a little boy ran into the square screaming. There's fire in the forest! Everyone followed. At the center of the sacred forest stood the ancient burning tree, once struck by lightning and left dead. Now, it was burning again. But no flames. No smoke. Just red-hot cracks glowing along its bark like bleeding wounds. And beside it, stood a figure in black. A tall, shadowy man, with no face, only a mask of ash. He raised his hand and pointed at Ijeoma. You open the ashes. Now burn with them. Then he disappeared. That night, Ijeoma couldn't sleep. The staff had turned black. The scroll her mother wrote was missing. And her grandfather was shaking, teeth clattering like a frightened child. I know that mask. I saw it in my dream. That is Azuru, the spirit of unfinished fire. He was the one who whispered lies to the elders. He fed their pride. He wanted Nwakigo dead. Ijeoma felt the air grow cold. But why now? She asked. Because you carried your mother's fire, he said. And he hates fire that comes from truth. Suddenly, loud banging hit the door. Boom! 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 Ijeoma! Come quickly! It was Mama Yugo, out of breath. They've taken Elder Ophodile. He vanished. His compound was full of black feathers. Ijeoma ran with them. When they arrived, they found the elders walking stick in the sand, standing straight up. No one dared touch it. Then the ground began to hum. Not shake. Hum, like a drum being beaten from underneath. Ijeoma turned to her grandfather. What do we do? He looked at her with tears in his blind eyes. You must go into the forest. You must enter the burning tree. Only the blood of Nwakigo can close the gate again. But what if I die? He smiled weakly. Then die with honor. Not silence. Night swallowed the village again. But this time, no one slept. All eyes watched as Ijeoma, dressed in a white wrapper, her face painted with charcoal, stepped into the forest alone. She held the sacred staff in one hand, and her mother's bead necklace in the other. The path to the burning tree was darker than before. The trees leaned in as if listening. The wind whispered her name. Ijeoma, Ijeoma, burn with me. When she reached the tree, it was alive with red light. Cracks ran through its bark like lightning. A loud heartbeat echoed from within it. Then she heard a scream. A human scream, coming from inside the tree. It was Elder Folktale. She stepped forward. Suddenly, the ground opened like a mouth and swallowed her whole. She fell into darkness. A deep pit. When her body hit the floor, there was no pain, only cold. And silence. But then, footsteps. A voice echoed. Welcome, child of ashes. She turned. Azuru stood before her. Taller than a man. Skin made of smoke. Mask of ash. No eyes. You brought the fire back. Now you must carry its curse. I came to stop you, Ijeoma said, her voice strong. Azuru laughed. I am older than your village. I was born from betrayal, fed by fear. When they burned your mother, they gave me power. Ijeoma held up the staff. It glowed white. But I carry her truth, and truth does not fear fire. Azuru roared. The whole chamber shook. Walls cracked. Screams of the silenced, the innocent women burned as witches, echoed around them. Ghostly hands reached out from the walls. Faces twisted in pain appeared in the smoke. They were all calling for peace. For rest. Ijeoma raised the staff and began to speak the sacred words from the scroll. Rain, oh rain, wash the pain. Mama's love will rise again. Azuru screamed. No. You cannot sing that. But the ground around Ijeoma lit up with fire, white, pure fire. The spirits of the women gathered behind her, whispering. Finish it, Ijeoma, speak the last line. She remembered it. Her mother's last words. When the drums are silent, and the madman sings, let truth sit, and fear kneel. A powerful wind blew. Azuru stumbled. His mask cracked. Lightning struck inside the chamber. The staff in Ijeoma's hand broke into two, and from it came a blinding light. Azuru screamed one last time. I will rise again. Then, silence. He vanished into smoke. The tree above exploded with golden light. Ijeoma woke up at the foot of the tree. It was morning. The tree was no longer burning. It had bloomed, covered in white flowers that smelled like healing rain. The village gathered around her. She stood slowly, holding only the necklace now. The staff was gone. But her spirit was stronger than ever. Mama Yugo wept. She went into death, and returned with peace. Her grandfather, though weak, smiled from where he sat. You have done what even your mother could not finish. You did not run from fear. You faced it. The people bowed before her. She walked to the old Judgment Square, where they once burned her mother, and placed the necklace on the ground. A new shrine was built there. Not for fear, but for truth. Truth may be buried under ashes, but it never dies. When lies rise, truth waits. And when a heart is brave enough to kneel in pain, it will rise with purpose. Never fear the fire. Let it reveal who you truly are. You've just watched another unforgettable tale on African Tales by Ijele. If you enjoyed this tales, give it a like, share, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from so I can give you a shout out in my next video. The fire is still burning, and the next story will be even hotter. See you in my next video, growing heart.